All right, today we're going to replace this tankless water heater. This is a 6 kilowatt tankless. We're going to replace it with an 8 kilowatt tankless. The reason is you will notice if you are doing a lot of tankless replacements, some homeowners decide to go with a higher flow shower head, these modern shower heads that use more water flow through them. So smaller tankless water heater would need to be upgraded. Now, thankfully in this case, the wiring behind the wall going to the breaker is an 8 gauge, which is what the manufacturer recommends, which we already have. So all we need to do in this case is replace the actual water heater at the connections here, and then the electrical connection that goes underneath here and into this disconnect box. It's very simple because these connections just screw out and screw back in. So whenever you're doing your install, do it with these type of connections, so then in the future if you need to replace it, it's so much easier than having to cut or glue or weld or whatever it may be. If you're with copper, you know you're going to have to weld. If you're with CPVC and you're doing it straight, you know you're going to have to cut and glue and stuff like that. So if you notice, we have our shut-offs there, shut-off here. Oh, one thing we want to point out is in this situation, and we recommend that in every time you put in a tankless water heater, put in a good filter, because this is going to filter the water as it comes through your city source or well before it enters the water heater. So if you follow this pipe here, it goes out from the filter, and the water that's coming in is coming from your city or well source. So let's get to it. One important note before you get started is make sure you turn off the breaker. Now in this particular situation, the breaker is located behind me, it's to my back, so it's already off. I have access to it. But then on the disconnect panel, what you want to do is you want to test it using a tester like this one. They're more reliable. If you don't happen to have one of those and you have one of these that don't require contact, you can just make sure that it doesn't beep when you put it right on the electrical, and then it's safe for you to work. Additionally, what you want to make sure you have, if the breaker like mine is not located right next to you where you can see it, is get yourself one of these. So these lockout tagout kits let you isolate the breaker, the one that you're working on, and only you would have a key to that breaker after you isolate it, after you turn it off. No one else can accidentally turn it back on. These are inexpensive. They're about 25 bucks. If you don't think your life is worth $25, then don't get it. But I do recommend you get it, because some people get electrocuted and they live to tell. Some don't. So definitely look into getting a lockout tag out kit. And they're located. I'll post more information on it on this review. Once it is safe to do so, and you have loosened the screws, make sure you also loosen the screw for the ground that's on the bottom. And make sure, if you're not sure what you're doing, make sure you're loosening the screw for the cable that's actually going in this white Romex here. You can make a mistake and loosen the one that's going in the wall. You don't want to loosen that one. That's the one that's going to your breaker panel. So once you do that, it should come out real easy. Same thing over here. This is the one that we loosened. Comes out real easy. And then the ground one, same thing. You just want to pull it out of there. Then you can just pull this through here. Once it's off there, it's safe to just pull it through. There we go. So now the tankless water heater is completely disconnected from electrical. Now we're going to go ahead and loosen these connections. I'm going to have a bucket with me, so I'm not going to make that recording, because there is going to be some water coming out of there, but I'm just going to make sure I collect as much water as I can instead of letting it fall out. But you do want to make sure you have your access completely isolated, so there's no water flowing through there into the filter, and then there's no water flowing here into the apartment in this case. So here we have the tankless water heater on a kitchen counter. And if you look at the dotted lines of this template, that is the actual size of the tankless water heater. I just placed it on top of this, and the actual size is the dotted line. So the best way to go about this, that's where your screws are going to be located, on the top, and the one in the bottom, which is actually this one right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to get a pair of scissors and cut this template on the dotted lines, and this will help you mounting it exactly where it's going to be. So we're going to do that next. So once you have it on the wall, as you can see, I got my 2 markings up at the very top already done. You see the paper, that page is already taped onto the wall real well. And there's one that I'm going to do just for the video purposes, and I'm trying to, what I'm using is a center punch, so there we go. And you want to make sure that your marking is as close as possible to the center. That'll give you more accuracy when it's time to hang this. So do that. Once that's done, and this is the tool, by the way, this is a center punch, so all you got to do is put it there, put your palm of your hand on this red area here, and then just push, and it makes the holes. This can break glass. This is, I mean, they use this for many things in different trades, so make sure you get that area punched really well, so it can mark the drywall once I remove the paper. It doesn't have to be this tool. You can even use an old Phillips screwdriver that's got a worn head or whatever. Just go like that, and if you get in there, just turn it, and that should be enough. Once you're done, you can remove the paper, and you can mark with a pen or a Sharpie around the dimples that you already created, and that will make it so much easier to start drilling. Now, I personally like to use these because they're strong, and in this case I got the 1-inch ones, so they're really great anchors, these screw anchors, because 1 inch means it's not going to go through the drywall too much. If you have 1/2-inch drywall, it's only going to go 1/2 inch past that. If you have 3/4 inch drywall, it's only going to barely go over just 1/4 inch. You don't want them too long, because remember, you're drilling on a wall that has piping behind it, so you don't want to hit your water pipes, because then you're going to have a humongous mess if you don't do this right. So do it the right way. Get short anchors. These are 1 inch. I don't know if they have them smaller than that, but 1 inch is good enough, and it'll hold the weight. Okay, we got our screws already in, and what you can see are the ones for the old water heater that were here. We're just going to leave those in there, and then the one at the bottom. So let's go ahead and hang that water heater. Okay, so the water heater's already hung. As you can see, it's level. You want to get it as much level as you can, and you want to make sure that your connections down here are easily accessible. So this will go here, of course. Then the other pipe that leaves the filter is going to go on the other side here. Then you want to make sure that your electrical, which in this case is on the side, you can follow it here. You have enough space for it to go inside your disconnect box and do the electrical wiring connections. So one thing I want to mention, why the newer models are putting this on the side versus the older models that used to have them on the bottom. If this thing were to spring a leak and this wiring was here and this disconnect box was somewhere really low, like down there, the water will trickle through the electrical and go into the box. That's not a good thing. Water and electricity don't mix. So I guess engineers and designers decided to, let's do it the safer and the better route, and put the newer water heaters on the side as far as the electrical. The old one that was here had it on the side, but it had it on this side, on my left. This one has it on the right, which is actually better because the electrical disconnect box is right there. So let's go ahead and continue with the rest of this installation. Okay, we've got our pipes already connected to the water heater. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to open up the valve that gives us the water from our city source. Notice we still have not connected our electrical. What we're doing now is we're just going to test to make sure that these connections are sealed and tight, make sure that there's no leaks. So what you want to do is you want to get a rag or paper towel and just clean out any water around here to make sure it's dry. And then when you turn it on, you want to feel for leaks. You want to let the water run through it. You always want to let the water run through it because there's air in the lines and you want to get that air out of there because it can damage the water heater when you can connect the electricity. So don't connect the electricity just yet. Test for leaks and then also let all that air purge out of the system as well. Now, these do not require Teflon tape. They actually have a seal on the inside that seals it when you screw it in. So make sure you take a note of that. It doesn't harm it if you put some Teflon in there, but you don't really need it. All right, once you got your connections all done, you want to get a paper towel and just run it on the fittings. Remember, you might drip water here before, so you have to dry everything first. Run your hands there or your paper towel. Make sure it's all dry. Make sure you don't see any water. You know, if you see some water that's here, that means you didn't dry it well enough. But you can let it sit there for a few minutes. Come back. Make sure your water lines are open so you can get pressure in there and make sure that it's completely dry. Final step would be, of course, you want to make sure, like I mentioned before, you purge for 2 to 3 minutes. Let the water on the hot water side run through so any air comes out through the faucet. It doesn't stay inside the tank, and because that can damage your tank. So the next thing is we're going to strip these wires, run them through there, do the final connection, test it, make sure it lights up, and you should be good to go. So make sure you have a stripper, a wire stripper that does 8 gauge, just like this one does, so you can strip your wire properly and get it in there, make a solid connection. All right, the wiring is in. You can see the ground is in there as well. Make sure your connections are really tight. We've already done that. Next thing to do is put this cover. Remember, the power is still out, so we have no power here. So we're gonna put that plate in there, and then our little disconnect is gonna go in there. And then finally, after that, we can go to our breaker and turn the breaker on. Just make sure that thing is in there nice and tight. There we go. So when you look at it here, you can see that the wiring went over the disconnect, came around under this way. I could have gone this way, but I prefer to go that way, keep it away from the water heater and the water. So let's go ahead, and as you can see, we've already opened the valves and had the water running for like 3 minutes, got all the air out, and your last and final step is to flip the breaker on and turn it on. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, we got it turned on, and what you see displaying is the actual incoming water temperature. Because as soon as you turn these valves on, there's going to be water flowing through this water heater, and the temperature sensor inside will tell you what the current incoming water temperature is at, and then we can set it. We have it set at 125. So 125 is your set point. 72 is the temperature coming in. Now, we are in early January in Florida, so this is normal. In the summertime, this is going to be much higher than that as far as incoming temperature. So this water heater will heat the water much more effectively in the summer than it does in the winter. So let's go ahead and turn it on and see what happens. So right now we are running hot water at a kitchen source, and you can see the water is climbing, and the flow rate is about 1.3 gallons per minute, and it reaches 125 rather quickly. So it went from 72 to 125 super fast. So that's a good sign. That means it's doing its job. So again, we would definitely recommend this water heater by Ecotouch. I like the sleek front area, and I like the fact that it tells you the flow rate, it tells you the incoming water temperature, and it also shows you the actual temperature that it's heating at the moment.